And for 19 magazine, they said, okay, go and interview this band called Wham.
No way.
It was a bit of a thing. You know, I was
Yes.
on the bed with Liza Minnelli. And I really was, and it really was me. And I knew that it was utterly jolting for me. And I knew that it was going to be the biggest shock for everybody listening.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
Well, this is a thrill. Vanessa Feltz, welcome to Virgin Radio and
Hello.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Hello.
So nice to be here. I love it.
I did warn you that I'm going to start by the embarrassing stuff and gush.
Oh my gosh, I can't think of anything I'd rather do than be gushed all over by you. And
You-
that is not a euphemism. That is the truth.
You are a world-class broadcaster. and
Now
I'm so
now
happy.
I'm blushing. Now I'm blushing. I didn't think you were going to go that far. Oh my gosh.
In the same workplace environment, we're up the corridor. It's great to meet you and to have you as a colleague.
Nice hanging around with you. I love it.
I've been a lovely listener of yours for a long time.
Lovely. That's obvious.
Your show on BBC Radio London was incredible. As somebody who kind of lived all around the country, I used to listen to you to get the feeling of what was going on in London. And I've heard you on brilliant days, you know, with the Olympics and what have you, and devastating days, and you've covered it all.
Well, it
and
was
you do it
many
brilliantly.
years. So I broadcast live on the day of Grenfell, the Grenfell tragedy, and I broadcast live on the day of 7/7 when people couldn't use their phones and people didn't know if their beloved husbands, children, friends, you know, had been on the bus or the trains that where the bombs were. They just didn't know, and they had no way of knowing, and radio was really the only link because it was the only thing you could listen to. And then, as you say, I broadcast on the gorgeous days, the royal weddings,
Yes.
the pageant on the Thames, you know, all that sort of thing. And as a real Londoner, I was born and raised in London. I've lived in London all my life. I've only ever moved about 6 miles in my entire life. Lots of people say, oh, I used to sell your grandma a melon, Vanessa, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of continuity. My kids went to the same school I went to. Now my grandson is at the same school I went to.
Amazing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of roots and real kind of feeling for London. And I you know, it was a big old deal to you know, take Mr. Murdoch's invitation and come over here. But I was very glad he chose me, and I'm having a ball.
We're so happy to have you
Thank
here,
you.
and
I'm
thank you
pleased
for
to be
spending
here.
time on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. How difficult, I'm looking at this list here, how difficult was it to come up with just 10 tracks?
Absolutely terribly
Sorry.
difficult. I really am not good at the question that starts, what are your favourite X?
Right.
I'm just not good at it. As soon as anyone asks me that, I absolutely panic. You know, if you say, what's your favourite film, I can't bear to think. If you say, what's your favourite food,
Yeah.
don't know, I just don't know. And
But
it
you've
was the
done
same.
very well with these.
I tried harder, but I don't know if they're all really obvious cliches or if they, you know, I can't tell. I'm not enough of a muso to know whether you think that's a good list or a bad list, and I really mean it. Is it?
Well,
Is it okay?
It's brilliant. And the
I
first
hope it's
pick
okay.
today is Wham.
Yeah.
Obviously, with this Netflix documentary coming out, George Michael's 60th birthday. Tell me why you've picked this.
I picked this because when I graduated from university in 1983, I wanted to be a journalist, and I didn't really know how to be one. I'd read English literature, which doesn't really prepare you for anything. So I went and stood in my local branch of Smith's, and I opened every magazine I liked the look of, and I wrote down on a piece of paper all the phone numbers of the magazines. In those days, you could phone through.
Yeah.
And I phoned every editor of every magazine. Some I didn't even get through to the editor. A few I did. And I said, you know, I'd like to write you an article about, and I came up with an idea for each different magazine. And for 19 magazine, they said, okay, go and interview this band called Wham.
No way.
And I went to their agent, Connie Filippello's office, which was in sort of behind the back streets of Soho. And there were these two young guys, and they'd had a falling out with their record company, and this was their sort of comeback record. And I obviously hadn't heard the name of it because it was brand new and hadn't been released yet or whatever. And it was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. And all weekend they had been phoning the Capital Radio hotline nominating their own song. And they had their whole family and their sisters and their neighbours and their cousins, their aunties, all doing the same thing. And in the middle of the interview, they said, hang on, hope you don't mind this, Vanessa, but, you know, we just want to listen to Capital Radio and see how our song has done.
Yeah.
And it was number one. Anyway, they jumped up. So I was 21. I reckon they were about 20, something like that.
Yeah.
So we were all a similar age. And they just jumped up with joy and started dancing on the sofa. And jumped me up too, and I was dancing on the sofa with them. And I remember leaving with a single, you know, 45 little single of Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, which I played to absolute death and drove my parents mad with it. And I left obviously equally in love with George and Andrew, just loved them both and thought they were marvellous. And I sort of sailed down the street on just a tidal wave of excitement.
Yeah.
And this wonderful track.
Did they have that star quality? So you met them very, very early on. Could you tell that
Absolutely.
they were destined for the big time?
Completely. They were absolutely irresistible. They were oozing charisma. They were great fun. They were handsome, both in different ways, but very, very handsome. They were great company, and the song was absolutely marvellous.
So you're going to be watching the Netflix documentary?
Of course I will.
It's going to be amazing, isn't it? Brilliant. Elton John is next on your list. Can we talk about Elton John? Do you know him?
Yes.
You must have interviewed him before. Why this song, and what do you make of the man?
I know him. I've interviewed him. I find him magnificent. I find him so intelligent, so fascinating, such a deep thinker, such a complex, such an intriguing, amazing character. His experiences in life have been remarkable. He's got a terrific sense of humour. One of the things I love about him is he adores music. And, there are lots of musicians who only listen to their own music or are absolutely stuck in one particular era. But he can talk to any young musician, is familiar with all their work.
Yeah, he seems to know everyone
and everything.
Everybody.
So I absolutely love him, and I chose this song because for a while I had a boyfriend who had an Audi TT car that was a convertible. Well, I thought this was the absolute ultimate in chic and, in sexy kind of gorgeousness. I just thought every time I got in that car,
it won you over.
Oh my God, yes. And he put this on the stereo system and blasted out. We'd sing along, and it was love and the wind blowing through my hair. It was all great.
And have you seen the show, the Farewell Yellow Brick Road show?
No, I would love to though.
It's weird, and this was the song actually that kind of brought a little tear to my eye, because he plays all the best bits of his career, and the Taron Egerton performance in Rocket Man, and it really was quite special. But you're very much like him, and I'm going to embarrass you again. I would say you two are national treasures in the way that we know everything about you. We know the highs and the lows, but who you are is out there, and that's what we love.
Well, it's nice of you to say. I'm certainly nowhere near on a par with him. He's a huge international megastar, and I'm somewhere in the nether regions of sort of British television presenters. I'm nowhere near that, but it's certainly true. The bit you said that is true is a bit of people knowing
they know you, they
everything about
you.
me. I've never been able to put up any sort of facade. I've worn my heart on my sleeve, for better or worse, and there's been a lot of worse as well. Some pretty awful moments, including very recently. A really badly broken heart. It's been horrible.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And it's been, obviously like everything that ever happens to me, right in the middle of the public eye. However, this time it's been amazing because I've been on social media. I've only been on it for about 15 months.
I mean, you took control of this situation, and you can feel that the nation are behind you.
Yes, well, that's what I was going to say. So I used to have an £8 Nokia until the pandemic. I was never on any kind of social media, but I am on Instagram now. And the outpouring of support has been extraordinary, to the point that there was even an article in the Evening Standard simply about the kind of amazing response. So I have actually taken a great deal of comfort from it. It has been a really lovely feeling to have people being so so amazingly demonstrative of support. It's been just remarkable. I certainly did not expect it.
I heard the most incredible podcast last year. I just wanted to mention this quickly. How to Fail. Mm-hmm. And your discussion on that and your chat, it was. I was
good at failing, aren't I? I seem to have done it so many times. I should be a right expert by now.
I listened to it and I thought, you are amazing, because you give so much inspiration, and people do have down moments, and bad moments. And
yeah, I think the How to Fail genius really is Elizabeth Day's genius, which is failure really is a part of life, and even the most successful people you ever meet will tell you about the litany of failures that they've built on to get to where they are. But
it's important, isn't it?
But I think when I was growing up, no one ever mentioned it. I just thought that if you worked really, really hard, you tried your very best, you weren't late, you were polite, you did your homework, you weren't drunk, you weren't nasty, you would go from success to success. It's not true, of course. You don't at all do that, and it's not always your fault when you're successful or even your genius, and it's also not always your fault when you fail. Sometimes you fail for all sorts of other reasons. But I think the curveball that really knocks you for six can be, if you're able to develop that resilience, the thing that propels you onto your next attempt, your next endeavour, which may also fail but may succeed. And so I think failure is an absolutely important ingredient in life. Can't ignore it, and you can't avoid it however hard you try.
Can I ask you about Boy George next, please, Vanessa?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on him? Because we were talking earlier about Elton John, national treasures.
Yeah.
Boy George certainly got to be one of those, hasn't he?
I think I'm entitled to call Boy George a friend. I made a programme with him in, I think, 1995, and it was called Vanessa's Day with Boy George. And I got to do everything Boy George was doing, just imagine it.
Yeah.
So we woke up together in the morning, cleaned our teeth, we did our hair, we had breakfast, and then we went on to have Boy George's day. And I was kind of leading Boy George's life with him. And I think we've been friends ever since. I'm not saying we hang out together all the time, but when we see each other, we're really, really pleased to. And there was one part of the programme where we were in the back of a car, and for some reason he was singing Life on Mars, David Bowie's Life on Mars, and I was singing with him, and I think we both ended up in tears. He was probably crying because of my excruciating singing, but I was crying because I was so moved by his singing. And he's an absolutely remarkable person, flamboyant, turbulent, not always easy, to be with, not always easy. On one day of filming, he just stuck his head out the window and he was wearing a blue face mask and said he really wasn't available to film for hours. There was a whole crew just waiting for him. That kind of fellow, capricious, mercurial, but enormously entertaining and highly talented. And I'm really very, very, very pleased and honoured to have him with any place at all in my life. I've really loved him ever since the very beginning.
What an amazing story. When you look back on all the shows you've done, do you have a particular favourite? Because obviously you were on The Big Breakfast, weren't you, in the early part of the 90s, on the bed doing the interviews, with Chris. Chris speaks to you on his show here, speaks about you on his show here on Virgin Radio. Do you have a highlight back in the 90s that you go, wow, I did that, I really loved doing it?
Well, I co-hosted the Jerry Springer show with him in Chicago.
Of course you did.
That was quite a big deal. On the bed on The Big Breakfast with Madonna, with Charlton Heston, with Jim Carrey, with I could really, with Jeff Goldblum, with Danny DeVito, with Andy McDowell, with Goldie Hawn. It just goes on and on and on every single morning. Do you sometimes
pinch yourself?
Well, I used to pinch myself then because the whole show was over by 9 a.m, and I would sometimes go straight to the supermarket and I'd just be putting the pasta in the trolley and some Lurpak or whatever it was and some sausages, and I'd be thinking, wait a minute, wait a second, what's the time? 20 minutes ago, I was on the bed with Kurt Russell. It's like, hang on, how could that have been me? I'm standing in, Temple Fortune Waitrose buying some sausages, and 20 minutes ago, it was a bit of a thing. I was on the bed with Liza Minnelli, and I really was, and it really was me. And I go straight to normal life, and then straight back again there in the morning. Amazing.
Can I ask you, what do you think of Madonna? I'm a huge Madonna fan. I just wonder.
I thought Madonna was a very difficult person and very unusual in that I would say she's the absolute opposite of a people pleaser.
Right.
So most people, however famous, however rich, however successful, want you to like them. And it's very obvious. So, for example, you'd be on the bed on The Big Breakfast with somebody absolutely huge. Alexis, what's her name? Silverstone, what's her name?
Alicia Silverstone.
Alicia, exactly. Yeah. Alicia Silverstone, huge star. The moment she got off the bed, she'd say, was that okay? Was that all right? And you think, well, why do you care? You're a huge star. You really care about whether I thought you were okay on The Big Breakfast? But they did care. They do care. They want you to like them, just as I'm going to say to you at the end, was this all right? Was that okay?
Yeah.
I will mind if you don't like it. I will be wanting you to think this is good and wanting your audience to enjoy it. Madonna doesn't give a beep. She just doesn't care. She doesn't care if she keeps you waiting 8 hours, 10 hours. She doesn't care if she's rude to you. She doesn't care if she makes eye contact. She does not care. And that's very alienating and unusual, I think, in a person. And I was under enormous pressure to deliver this fabulous interview for Channel 4. She made it as difficult, I think, as any other human being could make something difficult. But I won her through in the end. I did win her over in the end.
Is that why she hasn't made the list?
Yes.
There we go.
Not my favourite.
I had to ask. Okay, what should we go for next? Your pick.
Okay, let me pick Blondie and the Tide is High.
Oh, great song.
I mean, I've heard John Holt perform this live. And when I went to see him in concert, I found myself kind of gravitating forward with my arms outstretched as if I was, visiting, I don't know, Moses on Mount Sinai or something. And also I'm a Jewish girl and he does look quite rabbinical.
Right.
Because I know you may think that's ridiculous, but it's kind of true. He does. He's got this, he looks like one of the biblical prophet. He really does. And he's got this amazing kind of, inclusive, kind of endearing, kind of enfolding personality. Plus, what a singer! Oh my God, 1,000 volts of Holt. What could be better? But this is Blondie doing the song, and she's terrific as well. I've seen her live. I saw her live not that long ago, and at Somerset House in the centre of
Oh, wow. Nice
the
intimate
city,
gig.
London City, yeah. And boy, was she hot. She was, absolutely sassy.
She just exudes that star
does.
quality. You can see where Madonna got the inspiration from. She was at Coachella a couple of months ago. She came on with the glasses and the leather jacket. You thought $1 million.
Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I loved it then. I love this song and I love everything about it.
Vanessa Feltz has been my very, very special guest all this week on Virgin Radio and Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Vanessa, can I just congratulate you on the TV show?
Thank you.
I was saying to you earlier, I watch it every tea time. You do like the drive time show, 4 till 7.
That's right.
And it's really watchable. It's pacey. It's full of you and your comfort and your warmth. I'm a big fan.
Today I'm going to think of you eating your tea while I'm doing it. I'm thinking, there he is, having tea.
Sometimes not wearing
Is
a
he
lot.
having kippers? Is he naked? What's going on with him? I will definitely be thinking of that today.
But you're enjoying it?
Yes, I love it.
And you were on air. We must mention this when the news of the Queen passing last year.
I know. It
And
was an absolutely extraordinary moment because had I been at the BBC, I would never have been able to announce the Queen's death because we had to rehearse this protocol and it was absolutely set in stone that no presenter would ever utter those words. You would go straight to a kind of central broadcast at Radio 4 and there would be some kind of official announcement made. So I couldn't quite believe it was happening. I'd spent so many years being trained not to say it, knowing that I would never, ever get to say it. And then here I was at News UK, at Talk TV, and the news came in. We knew that it was about to happen. We thought it would happen. We didn't know whether it would happen during my show or afterwards or what. And then I was handed this piece of paper. And the most amazing thing about it all, of course, was A, announcing the death of Her Majesty the Queen. When I did it, I was in floods of tears. I'm only human, my gosh, And B, ending it, God save the King, in the same sentence. And I knew that it was utterly jolting for me. And I knew that it was going to be the biggest shock for everybody listening because you're completely absorbed in the death of the monarch who has ruled through your entire lifetime and beyond. And you've grown up with nothing else. You've never known anything else. And at the end of this cataclysmic announcement, you're saying, God save the King. My gosh, it was really, really a moment for me and for obviously everybody else.
How did you keep it together? Because you did.
Barely.
But you could hear the emotion in your voice, but it was, everyone should watch it back on YouTube. It really gets you. I
didn't want to spoil it for everybody else by sobbing loudly right through it, but certainly it was very hard to keep it together. But I felt that it was a kind of sacred mission to be the person telling people such an enormously important and significant historical thing. And also I kept thinking she was an actual person, of course, and with a real family and people who loved her as well as her loyal subjects. It was just felt like a monumentally big thing and a huge moment, and I was very, very privileged to do it. And also I was very privileged to broadcast live right through the King's coronation. Wow, what a wonderful thing to do that. I was just so elated and pleased.
It looked so much fun.
By the time I finished, I really felt that I was part of the royal family, honestly. I felt very closely related.
Honourary member.
Yes, totally.
What's your final track? Thank you so much. Thank you again for doing this. One final song, Vanessa, what are you having?
My final choice is Sugar Minott and Good Thing Going.
Oh, okay.
And that is because I think some songs just kind of encapsulate joy and love and sex and laughter and just all the wonderful things in life. And if you add into this the sort of Caribbean temperature, the heat and the light and the kind of atmosphere, and I'm deeply, deeply in love with reggae. I always have been.
Yeah.
For a nice Jewish girl from Totteridge, northwest London, the Beverly Hills of London, I've had a lifelong love affair with reggae, and this song, I think it just sums up the vibe for me.
Thrilled to have you here. Please keep in touch. Come up and see us whenever. We love you here.
I'd love to see you. I'll come and see you again very soon.
Vanessa's on Talk TV every day, Monday to Friday, 4 till 7. You will love it. And thank you so much for joining me this week, Vanessa.
My pleasure.